and welcome to Empowered by My Design, a platform where we come together to discuss the beauty of understanding our unique human design and our unique differentiation, which helps us to recognize our beauty, divinity, power, vision, purpose, and all in all, it helps us achieve and reach more fulfillment in our lives. We're discussing subjects that are relevant to the journey of deconditioning, and we hope that you will enjoy this episode.
Hi, folks. I'm Bunny, and this is Ruti, and we're here meeting up to explore the first line, specifically in the context of profiles, I think, because I'm a 5/1, so I have an unconscious or a first line body, and Rudi's a 1/3, so she's got a conscious or a first line personality. So this is something we have in common, but express it in different ways, and we are excited to go deep with it, which is a pretty apt first line keynote. If you're unfamiliar with the lines, they come from the ancient Chinese divination system known as the I Ching, which is one of the main components of the human design system. So there are 64 I Ching hexagrams, and each one is composed of 6 lines stacked on top of each other, going from the bottom line is the first line up into the 6th line. So the first line is literally the foundation of the hexagram. And the first line is connected to foundational themes. It's connected to security and survival and getting to the bottom of things, making sure there's a sense of solidity. So those are some of the keynotes of the first line, and that's kind of the general theme that we'll be going over. So yeah, I'm curious, Ruti, as a conscious first line, how do you connect with your first line? And I'm curious too what your connection was to this aspect of yourself before you knew that you were this through the language of human design. Like, did you have a connection to this side of yourself before that? And then how has it evolved since you know that you are a first line?
Great question. Thank you. Well, I've always been a curious being. As a child, I remember that I've always wanted to understand things very deeply, and that I had a very philosophical nature. I'm a Sagittarius. And so I have the 26th gate, which is Sagittarius in the heart center. It's very much about connecting from the heart and having a very sort of like, it's a place of connecting with others, because it's part of a tribal entrepreneurial line channel. And so I've always had this interest to connect with others from a place that's very philosophical. And so I've had this intention to understand things very deeply always. And yeah, I've always been kind of, people always told me that I love to philosophize. But it's interesting because human design gave me framework and, in a way, also permission to be that. It's almost like I felt like liberated when I found that out. There was the nerd inside of me that was, really supported to continue studying. So that was really helpful for me to know that I am a first line personality. And Yeah, it's interesting because the personality, we connect in human design the body graph to the personality side on the right side of the graph. That's the imprint of our first breath, what happens in the sky, the cosmic imprint of the personality, and that's related to the mind. And then there is the body imprint 88 days before that, that's connected more to the brain. So the personality is related to mind. And mind is a very interesting part in us where if you have been introduced to meditation in your life, which I have always, I've always heard of it, and I even gotten into a very deep journey in my early 20s of exploring meditation, really understanding what it's about. So it introduced me to the mind in such a way that I'm always interested to observe it. And so learning that my mind is an investigator was also very interesting. And so it's almost as if you're becoming aware of that so that you can watch that. That's part of the Ra's definition of the personality as the passenger consciousness. So I became aware of that tendency, but more from a place of needing to observe it, So that's really interesting. So yeah, thank you for asking. Super interesting. How about you with your subconscious experience and expression?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this because in sort of the traditional teachings, they say that we are less aware of our unconscious. And for me, I actually felt more aware or connected, more aware of and more connected to the investigator type themes when I first heard about human design. Of the two kind of archetypal themes, the first line and the fifth line that make it my profile, the first line was easier for me to be like, oh yeah, I love to learn. I love to do research. I love to go down these rabbit holes and like, what else can I learn about this? I was always a deeply insecure child, and felt a lot of shame around that. So I couldn't even like enjoy the sort of fuel that the insecurity can give to the first line because it kind of instigates further investigation. It's like, oh, I don't know this, I'm not sure, like let's find out. And yeah, I was curious and I wanted to know more, but I also felt bad about that and sometimes wouldn't even ask questions I wanted to ask because I was afraid to be seen as insecure. So, I mean, maybe some of these things that I'm sharing are like manifestations of it being on the body side rather than the personality side.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of something that I felt like I didn't have any control over. And this isn't the theme of today, but the fifth line has a lot of projections placed on it and a sense of expectation, and it can sense what people are seeing about it from the outside and the standards or the expectations that they're sort of holding that fifth line to. And so I feel like all of those were sort of coloring my like early connection with my first line, and
Mm-hmm.
like I felt like it was something I had to kind of keep private because I was aware of the attention that was on me or something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
Interesting.
now I feel like I've gone sort of on a journey with my connection to it. And yeah, where I'm currently at with it is like it's okay that it's insecure. And the fact that it doesn't have what it needs, it's part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been better at tracking within myself what it feels like when I don't know or I don't have the information I feel like I need to have that sense of a solid foundation.
Mm.
And rather than feeling bad about that, it's like I just I need to get that information. And I think the trick with the first line, at least for myself, is knowing when I have enough information and when I am over seeking, over digging, over learning, or trying to over prepare to fill this sort of just like insatiable insecurity, you know? And yeah, that's kind of currently where I am in the process, is sort of tracking that. It's like, am I okay not knowing the answer to this or having this information or being sure that this is something I can rely on?
Mm. Beautiful.
Those are some of the like questions I'll ask myself. Or,
Mm-hmm.
or actually, would this really help me to have a more solid foundation from which to do all my fifth line things from? And
Mm-hmm.
if that's the case, then it's like, yeah, in investing in my investigations on whatever that thing is something that I need,
Mm-hmm.
because the first line does need a secure foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's up to us to discern what we truly need to know for our foundation and what is just like a almost anxious, insatiable, undiscerning um, investigation. I've totally investigated things that I didn't need to. you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like, yeah, part of the process, I think.
That's fascinating. I was just reflecting on the fact that your two first lines in your cross are in the last two hexagrams, which I know they're kind of known to be the almost like the culmination of the journey with the hexagrams. And that sits in your cross and in your genius, like your earth placement is 63rd hexagram in the first line. I'd be very curious to hear some thoughts about that if you feel called to share. I feel like there is such a big difference between the the mind process and the brain process, because the brain's related to the body. That's where the authority is, right? So we have like that kind of intuitive inner knowing that's connecting us with our authority, and yours is the solar plexus. And so the mind, when what I'm dealing with as far as like personality side, the sun and the earth, it's more of it's almost like just something to be aware of, because I cannot let the mind make decisions for me. It's not my authority, right? And it's the sun gate is in the heart and the earth gate is in the throat. And neither of these are really my authority. But they're a big part of my color, a big part of my frequency, a big part of what people see me as. So yeah, be very aware of it and know how to understand it. But with regards to your color, that's really cool to know about. How was your experience as far as, like connecting the dots to like really listening to the body and understanding the wisdom of energy as a whole, like those two particular placement, the 64th and 63rd hexagrams. It's just, I'd be curious to hear any reflections you have on that.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating to me because they are in opposition on the wheel and, astrologically. And
Right.
it's just, yeah, it's so interesting how, yeah, just the contrast there, I
Mm-hmm.
think. And I guess they are providing that mental head pressure for both of the collective circuits. The
Mm-hmm.
63 is doubt, which is mental pressure for the logic circuit, kind of gets that mental component of the logic
Mm-hmm.
process started. And then 64 is confusion, which is the pressure for the abstract circuit,
Mm-hmm.
which is a more of the confusion sort of prompts one to reflect and abstractly, non-linearly, um, yeah, try to find a sense of meaning from whatever is prompting the confusion.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the logic side, the doubt is a little more direct, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, does this work, or how do we, is this pattern viable? And so then there's this more methodical, sort of step-by-step scientific type experiment process to look to see if there is, something solid within that pattern. Um, so they're different frequencies, but they're both in the same center.
Mm-hmm.
I personally feel more of a connection to the 64, I think, because I have the full channel.
Mm-hmm.
So the more that I watch myself, the more that I see that my way of understanding the world is over that abstract process, reflecting on things over time. Like, I've learned to be comfortable with the chaos, the uncertainty, the confusion. Like, if I
Mm-hmm.
don't understand it, just trust that
Mm-hmm.
eventually I will,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe I don't need to understand this particular thing. Um, so
That's
yeah, I feel
beautiful.
like it's so interesting because, yeah, these lines are rooted in particular gates, but I also feel like because there are profiles, they transcend those gates as well, and you can almost see how they color your whole life rather than just that one
Mm-hmm.
expression. But that could also just be my take. I'm not sure if that's, valid from the
Mm-hmm.
traditional teachings of the system. What do you think?
I resonate with it a lot. First of all, I was gonna say it's funny because it's like my nerdy mental personality really enjoyed those takes because, when it comes to studying my subconscious, I have a third line subconscious. Third line subconscious, so it throws me into experiences. I don't necessarily know why, but it
Mhm.
it it brings me into experiences so that later I understand. And the cool thing is I have the 47th gate that pairs with your 64, and you already know that whole channel because you have it complete. But for me to have the 47th gate in the third line in the subconscious in an undefined ajna, it's really interesting because I don't always understand exactly why it's bringing me to certain situations. So my mind wants to like investigate and try to make sense, right, of the situation. Plus, I have an entire open crown. I'm always trying to make sense. And so I like how you were describing the the process of working with the subconscious with the first line, especially given you have the crown defined. So you have a sense of knowing there, the sense of a different frequency than mine, which I really appreciate because what you said earlier was very like really hit me. It's like it's almost like sometimes we just have to accept that we don't always know why things are happening the way they are, or that we need to be patient with the process and be able to, like have a broader view rather than try to right now I gotta get it. It's like very first line foundational kind of energy when it comes with insecurity, you know? When there is a lot of insecurity in the frequency, and we were mentioning earlier how there are other aspects in our chart that can bring that. For example, so I have survival transference within my the what we call the what do we the wants and needs, which is related to the aspect of what do we call that? Forgot
The view.
yeah, exactly, the view. And so as long as I am connected to other people's needs and wants, and I let that dictate my view, I will be okay. But if I tap into my survival from insecurity, that will put me in transference. And the same with my motivation. I have innocence motivation, which has a transference of desire. And so if I tap into needing something for myself from a place of survival, which is very much related to insecurity, right? It's like it comes from this place of lack of trust, lack of, like it's a really deeply rooted uh, fear. That's also I'm splenic, so that I have plenty of fear teachings. And so I'm really meant to observe myself. I'm meant to observe my mind all the time in order to be in a not distorted frequency to start with, so that I can eventually really be in my pure nature to attract what's right for me. So that's kind of like, it was a really important thing for me to learn, is that I am meant to always have an observer point of view, that I'm always a little distant so that I can see what's happening and that I can be in trust of the process. So yeah, it's taken me many years to see that, but I have to say that human design, even though after years of meditations and I've been studying with different masters and I've listened to different teachers and it's been a beautiful journey, it was human design, the teachings of human design, of specifically of my chart, of my frequency, that really got me to humble and see that and work with that, because otherwise it doesn't work. Like life could be very miserable if I don't honor my nature. So
Hmm. Yeah, I feel like it's similar for me navigating those nuances. You know, you were talking about like observing yourself, or this is what it sounded like. Observing yourself helps you to discern whether you're in a natural investigative mode or if you've fallen into your survival
mhm,
distraction.
mhm.
Um, and I think that's what I think that's been my process too. So I have survival view, and my motivation transference is fear. So those are both first colors. So inherently in my mental realm, there is a juxtaposition between having a perspective on what is essential for survival, but being motivated by what is needed and essential rather than fear, which is like the first line and connected to survival and security and stuff. And so inherently there's a contrast there, but then I'm also a first line body. And so I've been reflecting a lot on, what's the hierarchy here, and how do I know if I'm, leaning too far into security, or what, when do I need to stop investigating and, you know, get up into that upper trigram, the 4, 5, 6. And I think for me it's noticing how I feel inside is the way forward. And I think getting more in touch with my emotional authority, my feeling cognition, it's allowed me to slow down and really be conscious of what's going on inside of me. And so when something feels essential, or it feels like it would be supportive for me in my foundation, the whatever the basics are of what I feel like I need, that is like a natural expression of me living out all of these different first line themes. But what I've noticed is that when I'm afraid or panicky or anxious, that is often a signal that I'm in some sort of a distorted first line frequency, where I'm like, I got to keep looking, trying, like taking notes, exploring, asking questions. Like, I feel like panicked is kind of the description that kind of keeps coming up over and over. If I'm in that sort of like panicked, anxious type of insecure state, it's often a sign that, like, okay, I'm way beyond what is necessary for my investigative process. No matter where it's coming from, it's like I'm beyond that. I am like totally like not aware of what is needed, what is actually supportive for the foundation, So that's been helping me try to like discern and track between these conflicting frequencies.
So true. Really well said as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I feel like we are constantly coming back to this place of awareness of self through trust.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of like the gist, the main message that you could, in a way, generalize. However, everyone gets to it differently, and this is where I love the fact that we're having these conversations, because there's something to be said about differentiated frequency, right? So each human being is a beautiful expression of their differentiated frequency. And with that, sometimes I feel like when it comes to, for example, working with others, like who are maybe less fortunate to have this tool, the human design tool, they're maybe have other different tools that are helping them, but to the degree of the nuances that we can touch here, there's something to be said about the fact that with this system, the human design system, that's not even 40 years old, we get such a gift to be able to differentiate the different energetic elements that we all have, because we are so complex. There's so many parts to us, and they're all so important. And this is very first line talking, by the way. This is like I can nerd on these things because I do love appreciating them. Like I'm such a sucker for the human nature because I constantly realize how much I'm still so far from really appreciating people, because there's so many people around me that if I just took the time to really, and I'm not meaning just to look at their chart, but I mean to study their chart, to really dive deeply into their chart, that gives me this opportunity to appreciate them, you know? And I encourage everyone who's listening to us to reflect on the gift that is available here. You know, whether you have any experience with that or not, it's like an invitation to dive deeper into frequency, the differentiated frequency of whichever one you want to study, if it's yours or if it's someone else. But that's the fun part, is that it's actually possible. We can actually do that, you know. And so these conversations, they were actually born out of this choice of studying each other's frequencies and enjoying the gift that is there. And that's, again, that's very much a first line awareness that we enjoy talking about. We enjoy, I feel like whenever I recognize this, I feel better. Like it's lifting me up, because I know that there's a reason why I'm a first line mind. You know, there's a gift in that for others, especially we're both projectors. And so our frequency is a gift for others. And so when we know our frequency, it's a gift for others. And so there's a lot in here that I feel like is a beautiful reminder for all of us, you know, to really love what we are and be able to really like go deep. If you have any first lines in your chart, look where they're at. Just to get get a little deeper there, as far as reflection, to understand yourself more, and you know, enjoy the investigation, because it can be very fun.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to expand on what it's like to be a first line as a projector. I think um, one of the sort of themes of being a projector is having a sense of perspective and awareness, and often understanding how systems work and becoming masterful at whatever system. And I mean, this is, you know, it's just super broad. This could literally be anything. It's not just like systems like human design, but yeah, becoming masterful at whatever system the projector is excited about learning. And so, from my perspective, being a first line is feels very compatible to being a projector. You
Mm-hmm.
know, it is a foundational frequency for us to hold on. Okay.
We have dogs and cats. It's
You hear him?
yeah, but it's cool. It's all good. It's okay. You know, our viewers have already seen him, so
That's
it's all
true.
good.
Yeah, he should be in my lap instead, and then he wouldn't be so yappy. Um,
It's all good.
anyways, um, Yeah, it feels like being a projector is very compatible with being a first line. It's like this first line is very supportive in us as projectors learning and mastering the systems that we're passionate about.
Mhm.
Um, I certainly have gone deep with human design, and my process for doing that may have been different, even as a projector, if I was a different combination of lines than a first line. I really enjoy taking classes, like looking into like how does this all work? One of my initial things that I did when I first found human design was I just like stared at the body graph and I was just like, how does this all fit together? And like, what are all the little components that make up this thing? I felt like I had to understand how it functions from that very foundational level, not even talking about what does any of it mean, but it's like, what are the mechanical functionings of the way that the chart is cast, and how do we get the different types? What does it mean to have a motor going to the throat or whatever? And it was like these little details that form these bigger descriptions, that we have. I had to understand all that for myself. I couldn't just like take it as like, oh yeah, manifestor is this and a projector is this. It's like, but what actually makes them a manifestor and what are the mechanics of that? Um, so that's, I guess, an example of me as a first line and as a projector needing to understand like what is the base of this wider thing that I'm interested in, what is the foundation of it.
Totally. And the thing with projectors, we are here to be recognized for the things that we master. We each have, by nature, projectors tend to want to study. This is when you're healthy, unless you're not really in touch with yourself, and then you're trying to live like other people. But the nature of projectors is the intention and desire and interest in studying things. And so back to your question from before about what was it like for me before human design, the relationship with the first line. I have many things in my life that I've mastered since a very young age, starting with playing cello since the age of 8, right? So that in itself is a big part of my life, is to learn to play the instrument and then also to have a unique connection to it and a unique ability to transmit that. I have 2644 in my conscious side. That's the channel of the transmitter. And it's been a very fascinating journey for me from the beginning with regards to the connection with the instrument. So there's a study of the instrument, but then there was a deeper study that's a very projector kind of study of my gifts as a cellist to others as a projector. And that's also related to other masteries. I've studied also of like lots of different kind of mindfulness studies since my early 20s. I've been very fascinated by the teachings of Osho, by the way, he's a projector as well. And Osho was also a splenic projector that was, his story is so fascinating. I think I mentioned this in a previous video about how he just was, he knew as soon as he came here that he wanted to be left alone, to be able to sense into the truth on his own. And so studying Osho for me was really powerful because there's this quality of inner knowing that I was attracted to. And that got me into getting more deeper into my own investigation of my own mindfulness. And then eventually I also got into sound engineering and music production, and I spent a lot of time really playing with sound and with styles of music and with how to express myself through this medium. And then came human design 5 years ago. And human design actually was so beautiful because it showed me all these past experiences. Like, it explained to me my nature of wanting to go really deep, foundationally studying all these areas of interest. And so, you know, being a projector now, my recent exploration is how to combine all these studies, all these masteries, and offer that to the world from a place of wholeness, from a place of self-awareness to support other people's self-awareness, you know? So this is a very much a first line magic. But it's not just first line magic. It's thanks to the first line magic that I have some awareness of that. But it's, of course, it's many, many other things too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess if we even further explore like being a projector, we know that our strategy is to wait for the invitation. And I think being a first line helps us to become masterful and experts at the things that we have deeply investigated and studied and learned and practiced. And by having that expertise, then we are attracting that recognition and those invitations from other people.
Mhm.
So if we allow ourselves to explore and really kind of get to the bottom and become talented with these things that we are compelled to learn, that gives us these tools in our toolbox that other people can pull out of us and seek us for guidance around, or seek us for guidance around. So I think that's another way that the first line supports the projector strategy and process.
Mhm. Totally. Totally. It's the journey of self-awareness, being able to appreciate yourself through understanding yourself. And ultimately, that also helps us with others, because projectors, we are naturally going to be absorbed in others just because our aura goes into the other by nature. And for that reason, many projectors end up completely distracted from themselves. Like, they're not able to really be self-aware until something happens that they kind of connect the dots. It can sometimes be quite traumatic. For example, I have been, by choice, immersed in a collective space of growth. It was a spiritual community, and it was a very powerful and profound social experiment, you can say. But part of the homogenized advice that we got there, and that exists in many spiritual communities, is this notion of to put yourself aside for the sake of serving others. And being a good soldier, that's like the shadow of the 26 gate, which I have in my conscious sun in the first line. It's very much about serving what I believe in, wanting to like support and contribute to what I believe in. It can be very, very, very loyal. But for me, the way that it was translated, there was like this sense of like, that's everything. That's all there is for me. I'm just going to be putting myself into that. And that's also very much a projector thing because I was just really all absorbed in the community and the needs of the community. But as I as life moved on and I found myself exploring and evolving beyond, and human design came to my life, I was like, okay, I'm a projector. I get absorbed in others. Now it's time for me to go and see myself. So that's what happened to me, but I know many other stories. I'd love to hear your story of what was it that helped you to really recognize the importance of, you know, coming back to see yourself and understand that you really are it's like you need to see yourself, love yourself, understand yourself so that you can really serve others better.
Yeah, I'm not sure about me right now, but I guess what I've been thinking about is for for you having the, I don't know, it's just that interesting juxtaposition between, you know, being a projector, being attuned to others, and having your purpose be fulfilled through your ability to guide others when invited. But then being a first line personality and a third line body, both of those are lines in the lower trigram.
Mhm.
And having the first number be in the lower trigram in general makes you a right angle cross,
Mhm.
which is internally, personally focused and motivated. So yeah, it's interesting how you've had these different phases where you're sort of coming in and out of those different things being a priority. Like within that community, some of your projector qualities of focusing on the others were more prominent, but then you needed to come back into what is, um, you know, what is your process like, and how do you recognize yourself, and how are you at home within yourself, and do you know yourself, and all of that. And then now you're emerging as a personally aware and motivated projector, so you can bring this personally investigated and then experimented with wisdom in
Mhm.
your guidance to others, you know? Um, yeah, just curious if you want to say more about that.
Yeah, thank you for asking. Well, the 1-3 profile is known to be the kind of profile that is really here to share their insights, their established truth from their experience. And many times it comes from the kind of errors that the subconscious sends us to. And that could be of great resource to other people, the other profiles. And so for me, yeah, I have gotten really deep into a place of basically trusting others before myself, or rather giving my power away, taking others' truth for granted. And I actually think that it was by design. Like, I don't know that when you look at my all of my imprints, my returns, it was all meant to happen that way. It's not like I did something wrong. there's a purpose for me going that route so that it can eventually come through me as this wisdom for others of, you know, don't lose your sovereignty, or, always know your differentiated nature. I didn't until 5 years ago. I mean, I really was taking spiritual truth from uh, others to be kind of, in a homogenized way, basically. It was very generalized. And I still, sometimes when I hear it out on social media or on the internet, it kind of gets me because I feel like it's either pulling me there, and then I'm like, wait, but I need to remember myself. And that's something that I feel is very much related also to the time we live in right now, because I have my Venus is in Aquarius 0 degrees in gate 60 in the fifth line. So it's the value of understanding the beauty of being in between and being able to relate about that. And it's been quite interesting for me because I definitely experienced it on my own flesh. I can definitely see the difference, in my own life. It's speaking from the wisdom of my experience. It's not some establishing truth from the head or from someone else's, teachings. I mean, I took that at the beginning, but then I was like, that doesn't actually work. I have to establish my own truth. And once I have given myself that permission, everything changed. But it happened as a result of the awareness of my first line, of my mind needed to be the witnesser, the passenger that's becoming conscious, right? So it's like that ability to understand myself and my uniqueness, because nobody can teach you your uniqueness. That's another paradox. It's like, you know, you we talk about enlightenment. I mean, I've been in an environment and the word enlightenment was, spoken of a lot. And yet, no one can really teach you how to get there. You have to learn yourself. You have to understand your magic, your uniqueness, your divinity as a differentiated being. There's no other way. Um, but for me, it was really through the errors that I saw, like, all right, now I see what doesn't work. Let me just, investigate it differently. So that really helped me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know it's so cool, the combinations between the different profile lines and how they, may seem like contradictory, but that they also, work together, and they each have their own time to play their part, play their role. Um, yeah, I think for myself as a young projector, I was certainly looking more outward than inward, in those um, those formative years. And I always wanted to have a deeper connection with the internal. Um, and I felt insecure that I didn't have one, like comparing myself to my sister, for example, who's also a 1/3 splenic projector.
Mm.
She was always much more self-expressive, self-identified, like just being who she was, still a projector. So there was a way in which her perspective on things was attuned and valuable, but her being was very much like, I'm going about just doing my thing. Um, and I was always envious of that and of other, you know, a lot of my childhood friends were generators too. And so they had a very much like, I'm living for myself. And I
Mm.
always felt very different because I was watching, I was observing, I was like taking things in and paying attention and just constantly assessing and being aware of everything that was going on.
Mhm.
And I think, some of this is investigative. Um, and I think some of that is also like being a fifth line and being so aware of what the expectations are and just trying to, as carefully as possible, navigate within all of those different expectations. And so my my initial kind of projectorness was learning and studying how people operate and fitting myself into the expectations of how people operate. Like I was a master at being exactly who I thought I was supposed to be for whatever situation it was.
Mm.
And I was very skilled at that, but like that's not me. That's not me expressing my true nature. That was like a coping strategy for the complex world and not understanding that like I internally am very complex, triple split, 8 centers defined, emotional authority, projector, 5-1, like every different type of circuit frequency. So there was just like so much going on that I didn't even know like where to start. And so
Mm.
both as a left angle projector and a conscious like fifth line aware of projections and projection field, I was like, okay, I just need to stay safe by like managing how I'm perceived by the external world, you
Mm.
know? Um, so yeah, I feel like I spent a lot of time doing that. But then I did go into a phase where I finally started to investigate myself internally and get to know myself and develop a sense of inner self-awareness. And that has been super enriching and fulfilling and satisfying. And now I feel like what I can offer as a left angle projector is sort of a synthesis of the awareness of the outside with like the wisdom of my own internal process. And so my like heresy isn't only coming just from the external observations or just from external investigations, but it's coming from a combination of my internal reflections and investigations and my external perception. So I'm finally feeling like I am more secure in the um, the insights or the perceptions or the solutions that I can offer other people as a projector and as a fifth line projector because I've merged those two lines together and I've developed my own process for synthesizing them. So
Mm.
that's kind of where I am now with
Mm.
it.
Powerful. Wow. Thank you for sharing all that. Yeah, because also you're triple split, so it's this journey of connecting with others, right? So you had a lot of opportunities through other people to understand yourself, right? Like it's an and the left angle. It's like it's just so fascinating to me to to see the magic of how each person is meant to understand themselves, right? Like there's no mistakes, there are no errors in how we're designed. That's
Hmm.
that's part of like the magic to me. It's like how this um divine orchestration of our nature is expressed, and the fact that we can read that. We can actually, now we have a tool, we can read that and we can nerd on that and we can appreciate it even more and actually um, understand what it takes to be ourselves. I was just recently reflecting on this notion of, the the crown, or rather the connection to the spirit world. I mean, we have it so that we can reflect on the meaning of life. And there's an interesting say by someone who has a defined crown. Actually, maybe quite a few people here might know him, Richard Rudd from the Jinkies, which I love very much because I combine the Jinkies in my teachings with human design. And so he said something so powerful and made me think a lot. He said that ultimately, the only real purpose of life, and this is very defined ground, the only real purpose of life is to be yourself. And yet to get there, it takes this journey of understanding your differentiated truth. Because again, it comes down to the fact that no one can model you how to be you. And it's a really great thing that we have this tool that we can actually, you know, we can actually use it to appreciate our unique expression, our unique nature, so that we can get there to that nature of being, But for me, for years, that was the challenge, is that I took these type of truths over my own, and I'm an establisher of truth. That's the 1-3 profile, is very much needs to get to things on their own. That's why it's like, you learn from your experience. It's very kind of like the subconscious way. It sends you into the experience so that you can learn from it. And so I can't tell you how much it helped me. And I really want to encourage everyone listening, again, just love yourself enough to really understand your differentiated nature of what it means to be you. It's such a beautiful tool to help us all appreciate each other more. And yeah, I'm really grateful that we chose this topic today, because it's such a fascinating, enlightening topic. And yeah, I feel like we've shared quite a bit about it. And I'm curious if you have anything you'd like to say as our ending for this episode before we say goodbye.
Yeah, uh, yeah, I think you brought up some good points about, us coming in to ourselves, our own awareness, our own frequencies, loving ourselves as we are. And I think the first line can really kickstart that process of learning and studying and investigating and consuming the knowledge or the teachings that give us that foundation from which to build off of. Um, but I do think that, and here I am coming in as a 5-1 again, but I do think that that is the foundation, but there's more to that, and I think the overall purpose of human design is more than just studying and learning, but it's experimenting and it's embodying and it's reflecting and it's paying attention and it's cultivating that sense of awareness. And so I think it's one thing to learn these different things about ourselves, but then to experiment with them, to witness them, to reflect on them, to notice how they come up in these little different moments.
Mhm.
That's when we truly we truly start to know ourselves, to come into our awareness, to experience what it feels like to be ourselves in our frequency, and then to find a sense of, you know, security, I guess, like if we're thinking about it that way, in who we are, then we are embodying those qualities. We're leading from that place. We're, as projectors, guiding from that place. So I think it potentially starts mentally, but it also starts from that internal like insecurity. I've got to know, I've got to understand. But then we, and I think your third line naturally does this. And then for everyone else, human design, if connected with in an aligned way, does this. You know, we experiment, we start to embody it, and then we find the actual security, the actual foundation that we need from the full process of it, not just
Mhm.
like the research or the study or whatever.
So,
Um, so that's what has allowed me to finally feel some sense of security, with, I'll just use human design as an example. I, you know, have taken many courses. I've done a lot of self-study, but I couldn't find that the bottom of any of it, the completion, the like expertise, the mastery. I couldn't find what I was looking for in any of that. I had to experiment with it for myself, and as a fifth line, I had to put myself out there and um, help others solve problems for other people using this wisdom. And then through like that process of going through all of the lines, I found what I needed.
mhm.
Yeah, I found that sense of like, okay, I do have some sense of expertise in this. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. It was my own differentiated, unique,
Mhm.
uh, acquired expertise with it. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
beautiful.
anyways.
So beautiful. Yeah, totally. I mean, 100%. It is through studying ourselves that we can understand the fullness of who we are. And ultimately, that's help us to become secure. And it's the body, that the body has the awareness, the connection with the inner authority, the ability to trust in the beyond the mind. The mind is just, it can only be of service if it's an observer.
Hmm.
Otherwise, it's kind of, kind of a problem, can be. Or rather, it can be something that can lock us into a place where we think it's in charge, but it's never in charge. I was just noticing how my spleen, which is my authority, has more unconscious energy than conscious. It has six unconscious lines and four conscious. So really what that means to me is that I'll be I'll do better the more I listen to my body and the more I'm able to really, like you said, take every experience and learn from the experience and see what's actually happening. Not just from like, oh yeah, I've gained some knowledge, I think I know something. That's always a dangerous place to be because they say the more you think that the more in trouble you are. And first liners, personalities, like we really think we know, but it's just, it can be a joke sometimes. But with that comes like, okay, appreciate the way you are, appreciate your nature, I have also first line in the ego center. The heart is also known as the ego center. So that's also an interesting part of it, that it's like, how to make peace with that, how to work with that, how to not let that take me in the wrong path. So what I'm trying to say is that it just comes to the love and the awareness, and I think that we're essentially saying the same thing, is that the love and the awareness of who we are comes as a result of being able to really be open to the experience, the unknown stuff that happens in the moment, the ability to observe, the ability to trust in the body, go beyond the mind. And ultimately, that feels like the formula for, you could say, happy life, fulfilled life.
Success.
Yeah, and success for projectors, exactly. Because I still feel like I'm decoding that. It's very
Yeah.
much also first line personality, wants to always decode everything. Um, but I'm grateful actually even for this conversation, because I'm feeling like I've just meditated. I feel like this has been a very conscious place of awareness, bringing first line into a place of, yeah, like a place of loving awareness. And that's really all we can do. And so, yeah, I'm inviting everyone to tune in to past videos that we've made. We always talk about the projector consciousness, the projector path, the projector liberation, the deconditioning, the shadow work that we're doing. This is our interest with this channel. We're obviously going to have more goodies for you. And also, yeah, we may leave some links for you to check of our own personal work. And we're excited. If you have any questions or comments or anything you want to bring up, we would love to hear from you, and we can also address it in our future videos. And please share this video with your friends if you enjoyed it. And if you haven't done so already, please do subscribe to our channel. And yeah, we're looking forward to our next videos. So thanks so much for watching us, and have a wonderful day.
Thank you.